Alright, so even in the legs, right, you never want to go on the inside positioning. If he turns rapidly, my fingers can get broken, right? If he literally took his leg, swooped it around, put it in front, right? If I kept control in there, right? You see how it starts to close off, right? My fingers can get caught and broken, right? This same thing does not typically happen, typically, air quote, right? If we do it like this. Reason why is because there's not enough to beat the positioning, right? Now, if there's enough to beat the positioning, aka the pant's super loose or your grip's super shit, right, and you're able to keep onto it somehow, and it wraps around and your fingers get caught, it will typically just be your pinky finger. Sacrifice, right? But it happens, right? Typically, it shouldn't, but what we're gonna do is you're gonna take your hand, right, and you're going to roll into a punch, right? Like if I was going to punch his leg to the floor. Does that make sense? So this should be tucked on the inside of my grips. Does that make sense? So I'm going here and I'm rolling into it. And I'm going to typically use this as a push, right? I can use this as cross push or down push. And you can use it as a pull, but if you're using it as a pull, right, it has to do with an elbow pull, not a hand pull. Don't try to pull like this. If you pull up like this, right, you're going to break your own locks, right? If I was like this and I was like, what happens? What happens to those locks, right? They're gone. He didn't even do anything, right? I did all that, right? Where if I was here and I pull, I could take his pants off if I really wanted to. You see it in competition sometimes, it's really fun to see it. Anyway, next type of gripping, rope grips. Not rope grips. These are an L grip / S grip. Does that make sense? They make L's. S grip, most people think of this. Yeah. Same concept, right? Literally just going to take it like so, right? These are particularly weak to downward motion. If he kicks his foot to his butt, right? He does it again. Other than that, these are great, right? So when we're doing them, now if he tries to kip away from them or anything, it makes it very hard for him, right? Because the weakness of this is down. Does that make sense? Now, we know that this grip can be used, obviously, here on the legs, right? These grips can be used other places too. So keep that in mind. Most often you'll see these types of grips on those pant legs initially, right? Kind of an older school style jiu-jitsu thing, but they do work. You literally just scoop them up. And a lot of people will take them and they'll just try. That's it, right? These are good for pushing and pulling, kind of, in my personal opinion. They're not very great for angular pulls, but they allow you to manipulate the material, right? And pull. Where sometimes these hook grips, right? If you angle them and pull, you lose them, right? I think hook grips are superior to how I play my game, right? But a lot of people like these two. I think these are harder to keep, in my personal opinion, but you do you. Maybe you got fucking gorilla grips. I don't know, right? These are strong too, but they allow for movement and articulation, right? Which allows us to pull at different angles. So if he was trying to play, let's say, De La Riva, right? And I come into this type of gripping, right? Remember, the weakness to this grip is down, right? So I want to take the primary grip that's going to be the one that goes the least amount of down, right? This is my primary grip. I have to address this one off of me. See how that grip is failing because it went down, right? So here, once that grip is addressed, right, either hook grip or not, this grip where I can articulate, once it's off, allows me to do other things, right? So again, we're here, right? Once I address one, coming on the inside, versus a hook grip or if I had hook grips of that nature, right, and I try to do that same thing, if he kicked or anything, I have very little control. He can kick all he wants, because his downward force isn't powerful here, right? Try to bring your foot to your butt. See how I can't do it? And he's fighting little bitty hands that are out here. I'm not putting a lot of effort into it, right? So that's the type of gripping with those Docilio-Guyos, right? Obviously we have the good old customary C grips, right, with thumb. We use these for push and pull, right? These are the weakest at any place that the thumb is at. How do you attack one of these grips? If he rotates and pulls his leg, cool, easy, right? He tries to rotate that way, he's not gonna get away from it. So we always attack these types of C grips wherever the thumb is at, right? If he rotates towards the thumb, can't hold it. Make sense? Easy, right? All right. Figure 4, or let's say body. Does that make sense? What I'm talking about here? How do we break this type of gripping? It's not breaking the grip. Think about the grip itself. That's part of it, yes? Right? What's the weakness of this grip? One, it doesn't have a lot of control back and forth, right? We add that by making more pressure, right? But the weakness of this grip is actually this, right? Wherever this is determines if his other foot is on top like this and I can't fill this space, this grip does nothing, right? So what matters is where this bone is. So the most effect that we can have on this grip is wherever we can affect this bone, right? Sometimes that is the elbow by pushing it out, right? We push that elbow out, it does this, right? It takes it from being online supported, pushes it out, gets it away from being supported, and it's an easy escape, right? Sometimes it has to do with peeling from the inside, positioning, and pressing it out. Does that make sense? Very rarely do we ever want to hike it up for someone. You can, I don't recommend it. If you're doing that, you should be attacking the shoulder next, right? If you hike it up and then press the shoulder, right? Don't do it. Let's put it. You can do it. Not intelligent, in my personal opinion. If you are doing that, you should be fighting it in a different way. But you know, sometimes there's different ways of doing it. But you should be expanding and opening this. That's why when people do this, we lock it like this. So it makes it harder, so you have to address another thing first, right? Or you again attack the elbow. You want to press on the elbow with your other footsie, or your hand, I don't really care. What happens? You see how that grip opens? Because my arm does this. Make sense? Cool. All right. Next we got monkey grips, right? Thumbless grips. These are scoops, right? These are great for pulling, really shit for pushing, right? And they're great for control. Does that make sense? Right? They do not push. If I try to push, I'm not holding anyone, right? People oftentimes make a mistake, right? They're like, oh, I'm here, I'm trying to push someone or move something, right? They think that this is a push grip. This is not. If you're gonna push someone, open your fucking hand. Just add your thumb in, right? This is a push. This scoop, push, right? Scoop, push. Pulling, push, right? This, very shit for pulling someone. In fact, it doesn't work, right? This is very shit for pulling. I'm sorry, and for pushing. Doesn't work, right? You could put it on top of someone, but now you're just punching someone, right? And that's retarded. Does that make sense? Okay. So, scoop grips, which are thumbless, you do a lot of these for control, if that makes sense, right? If I was on his hip and I didn't want to leave, a scoop grip. Underneath the armpits, scoop grip, right? Scoop grip. They feed into other grips, right? realize rope grips are not just for your opponent's geese, but for your own. We combine types of gripping, right? So we can do those types of gripping on our own stuff, right? Don't limit how you use these grips. Now that we've understand a little bit more of like what we're talking about grip-wise, we can see how we would utilize these types of gripping, right, on individuals, and why certain grips you don't see very often. Let's say I hook him, he turns his hand a little and pushes away, that's why it's super weak, versus something as simple as a no thumb grip. He pushes, twists, or anything like that. This is very hard to break. It's also because I'm grabbing at his actual pinky. If the further I grab down his hand, the easier this becomes to fight, right? Does that make sense?
So the higher your grip.
So
that makes sense.
the lever or the lever, what also makes this more effective, right, is 1 joint, 2 joints, 3 joints, possible 4, right? Each joint has its own articulation or movement, right? The closer I get to a singular joint, the higher effect it has on force, right? We get here, right, he presses away. It's a 2 joint system now, right? The pressure from the push, right, is lessened, right? Again, the single point, right, makes very big difference to go from right here to right there. Does that make sense? He presses away, easy, right? He presses away, double joint, right? Now, we do it again. That's very weak, right? Because the more joint you add into it is the more bend, right? And the more effect that you're having on the force, right? It's like a weird pulley system, except it's not a pulley at all, but, you know. Yeah, don't grab a single fingy. You should be catching the whole handsies. Anyway, so that's why you don't see people doing these types of hook gripping on this inside. One, it'd be hard to establish, but if I established it, it's actually pretty easy to beat, right? He rotates his hand and oh, I wasted all that time where I could have literally just done this, right? And now I'm like, oh, okay, this type of gripping is superior for this positioning, right? But like if I tried that same type of gripping like this and he peels my hand now, was it superior to taking something like this? Peel my hand. He can make space, but it's very hard to peel the hand, right? But why? Because the thumb is protected on the inside of the body, so it makes it hard to get. Because remember, the weakest part of this grip is my thumb. So if he wants to escape, he attacks the thumb. The thumb is protected, makes it a little harder to get to, right? But you can still get to it. You just got to rotate it, go towards the wrist itself, right? So we go to the wrist, peel it outward, right? And now, right, you see how my thumb's exposed? Now you just look away, right? Super easy to defend against once you understand the gripping mechanics, right? If I was like this, and I remember what the weak point is, right? It's the forearm, right? So even going for a rear naked, right? Where this forearm is, right, matters where the choke is, right? So if my forearm starts to go down, no choke, right? If my forearm starts to gravitate this way, there's no choke. Does that make sense? Okay, and we know that we have to address what part, right? This right here is what we have to address first. Why? Because it's supporting and locking this, right? So, once you understand the grip fighting, right, and where it's going, right, if I feel like this space is starting to get closed off, I know we have to open this forearm, right? I can do so by pulling or affecting the elbow. Does that make sense? All right. So this type of grip fighting is super important, right? I know, me as the finisher, that I want to do this, right? He doesn't want that. So what's he gonna do? Cool. Now we go into a grip fight. What became more important, right? My ability to hold his top leg, right? Or to support the grip that was gonna finish him. Does that make sense? All of jiu-jitsu is a grip fight. Understanding grip fighting will improve your ability to finish. Does that make sense? Okay. So, I want you to take this type of positioning, right? And I want you to work on just holding actual locks, or like grips, right? So if I'm here and I'm holding this, he now has to address it. How is he gonna address it? All right? Okay. How's he gonna address it? Scoop grips are easy, right? What about now? Beating the elbow, good. Right? Screw grips are easy. Press a little further. Yeah, there you go. Alright, so once you understand the grips, right, that's all we're gonna be doing. I want you to work on holding a grip, understanding how the grip works, right? I want you to feel what grip's holding what, right? This type of gripping, right, there's no thumb, right? So that means it's like it's a shelf, it's a scoop, right? You can either break the scoop itself, right? If he presses on my elbow, funny enough, right, and then turns, you gotta break the goose's neck. You gotta fuck it in the ass, right? Sounds weird, I know, right? But it's a scoop, right? Sucks at pushing. We make it push. Understand your grips, right? They have limitations. They have reasons why what we do, right? Let's say I just stay gable gripped. What's he gonna do?
Nothing.
Work to the inside of the grip. You see how you're working on the top side?
Yeah.
Try to work through the bottom side and work on the inside of it. Now, my grip can stay locked, but it's not holding you very well, is it?
Yeah.
Right? So, when people gable grip and stuff like that, we know it's strong, right? The weakness is its ability that we can squeeze it together, right? If we squeeze it together, this grip does literally fucking no. Right? Cool. Then we go into like wrist to wrist or ball and chain again, right? Both, in my opinion, are not like the best. Also, I guess I failed to mention, hey, wrist to wrist is a type of gripping, right? Strong for finishes, not strong for control, because he literally just grabs one hand, and now I'm not holding him. Does that make sense? So wrist to wrist, good for like if I was darsing or putting a choke on or breaking mechanic, right? If I was on top of a wrist, we go wrist to wrist, right? Instead of gable gripping leaves space, right? If I go wrist to wrist, that's a break. Does that feel very tight? And I've not applied pressure like this, right? So like, we can break very well like this. The problem is, if I'm going to break and he literally just takes this hand and grabs the top hand, lift it up. We just put your hand underneath it and lift it up. Now, I'm not literally holding nothing, right? So like that's one of the weaknesses of this type of grip, right? So with gable grip, we know it's strong, right? If we pinch it together, it's done. But also, if we get on the inside of it, right? There's very little this grip does other than squeeze, right? So once we're on the inside of it, if we can literally just press it away more, Does that make sense? Cool. All right. I know this is a bit. Gripping is a big topic. Give it some time. Play. Doesn't fit for me, you know what I mean? Okay. So we're going over gripping today. Whoa, I'm stiff. That was rough. Anyway, I'm actually gonna use you. You're right there. You're already standing. You wanna sit down for me? Back. Back. So, obviously, we've been going over back, and a lot of y'all probably do this grip, this type of gable gripping, right? There's S gripping, right? There's ball and chain. There's rope grips. There's L grips, right? And there's hook grips, right? There are other variations. Obviously, the rear naked is a type of grip, right? Where I'm grabbing my own bicep, locking over it using pressure, right? And then going in for a type of choke slash thing. But this is a type of grip, right? You see the same thing in arm bar defense and stuff like that, right? So like those are types of grips, but you also have scoop grips, right? These types of grips will tell you a lot about what your opponent's intentions are, right? If my hands are like this, they're going to stay like this, right, until they're not, right? These is for either control, right, or going into this style, right? When people's hands are like this. When people's hands are S, they're trying to typically raise your elbows because it gives them articulation, right? The reason why we have an S grip versus a gable grip, right, is for our movement, articulation, right? Ball and chain is because they want to apply one hand somewhere else while maintaining control, right? Now this can lead into, aka the same kind of things, trade-offs, right? But these grip fights will tell you a lot about like what your opponent's intentions are. If I go here, right, I'm already around the neck. So this other hand, if it goes outward, right, like this, it means I'm trying to, right? If it comes inward, right, I'm trying to do a center line choke, right? If it goes to the other hand, I'm trying to prevent rotation while coming offline, typically to attack an arm, right? Reason why is because it's going to allow me to keep control of the opponent, control the space while traveling, right? So now he can't leave it. Boom. Right, so like how people grip you will give you a great insight of how to defend it, but also how people defend, right? So whatever grip he takes, go ahead and take whatever grip you like. So I can feel, you see how his grip, this grip only works one direction, right? If he wants to get this away from his neck, he has to pull it down, right? Because pull my hand outward. No, just one hand. Very weak, right? Pull it down. Pretty strong, right? And the weakness of this grip, right, is actually his elbow, right? So if we were more like this, he tries to pull my hand down and I do this. This grip does absolutely nothing now. So now he would change his grip, right? One hand, remember, only one hand. So now you see this grip is for pushing, right? If this grip is for pushing, that means that there's two types of defenses for it. What do you think it is? Well, you think strength. Okay, I was going to remove that one because like, I don't think that's an actual viable defense, right? Because this, where my elbow is at, I'm at a weak spot, so if he pushes, I'm going to lose that. I'm wasting energy fighting it, right? So I'm not going to do that. However, right, one, I can go to its extension, right? Because his push can only go so far, right? And here, after the push, there's nothing, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Or, right, I can do a misalignment of the push, right? So it's going, and I do something like this. I'm pushing, right? So I'm basically beating a frame with an angle, right? This is no different than a frame, right? This frame has power, then it doesn't. Same general concept, same result, right? So like, there's very few grips in the defense aspects here that actually matter, because they all kind of do the same thing, right? If he has the inside positioning with his hand, right, and he pushes away, this is a push, right? We can beat pushes by either changing the angle, right? Changing the angle of whatever pushing me, go to its extension, etc. Does that make sense? Now, if he's pulling it, pull it across body, right? So now I know, right, for me to be able to beat this kind of like gripping, yep, even hook gripping, right? How do I have to address it, right? What's the effect, right? It's either allowing him access to my shoulder, my elbow, right, where I'm in danger, right, or it's opening enough space right here so he can rotate and escape, right? So if we're inside, right, and he's pulling, I know I have to address this. That's an outside pull, technically. Inside, there we go. Anyway, so if we're on the inside pull, I know I either have to affect the elbow, right, or I have to break the grip on top, right, like so. Now he can try to pull me all he wants, but the effect is negligible, if anything, right? It's not gonna have any effect. Grip fighting is super important, and it tells us a lot about what's happening, right? If I know he's pulling me over here, right, I know what direction he wants to go, right? If I can affect that like so, I can maintain the back control. Does that make sense? Okay, so what I want you to do is I want your defending opponent to just address whatever grips you take initially, right? Do whatever back control nonsense you're gonna do. Whatever grips they take, I want you to literally think about what grips they have. You take whatever grips you want. So he's taking and grabbing like this, right? How will I address these grips, and how will I further the position for myself? AKA, the goal is always gonna be to submit someone, right? So either end up in a higher position, right? Where you've isolated out, right? Isolated out, or you establish enough inside control where you will win, right? So they take grips, right? How would I address this grip? Now he would readdress his own grips, right? And now I'm going to readdress my grips, right? And I want y'all to worry about strictly hand gripping right now, right? You see how I left my legs out of this equation? Your legs are another form of gripping, right? A figure four, the same thing that you do with your bicep, is the same thing people talk about when they're talking about, you know, body locks. It's just with your legs, right? We're talking about inside positioning with the legs, right? Holding someone with your hooks. This is what this is, right? It's just inverted, right? And there's no head to help us keep it stable. Does that make sense? Cool. I want you to worry about hands first, and then we'll worry about other stuff, okay? This is